There is a particular kind of suffering that comes not from failure, but from having to begin again. You built something. You learned something. You reached a level of competence that felt earned. And then something happened. The industry changed. The relationship ended. The path you were on closed, or the version of yourself that was walking. It quietly stopped being someone you recognized. And now you are back at the beginning, holding a beginner's uncertainty in hands that remember knowing more. The feeling is hard to describe precisely, which is part of why it's hard to address. It's not pure grief, it contains something adjacent to shame, the sense that being here represents a personal failure rather than a circumstance. It feels like you went backwards when life is supposed to move forward. Like the experience and the accumulated effort somehow didn't count. This feeling is so common it barely gets named. And the shame of it, the sense that starting over represents something lost, rather than something possible, quietly shapes. Which risks people take, which recoveries they allow themselves, which new chapters they even try to open. Many people stay in situations that have stopped working, rather than face the specific discomfort of the beginning again. For 1,000 years, one of the central practices of Zen Buddhism has offered a response to exactly this feeling. It doesn't try to make starting over hurt less. It does something more radical. It argues that the beginner's position is not a diminished state. It is a specific form of resource, one that the expert mind has spent years trying to recover. The Japanese word is Shoshin. It means literally beginner's mind, and it comes from one of the most cited passages in all of Zen literature. The opening line of a 1970 book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, by the Japanese teacher Shunryu Suzuki. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. 9 words, one of the most precise descriptions of a cognitive trap that has ever been written. This is not encouragement dressed up as wisdom. It is a precise observation about what happens to the mind as it acquires expertise, and what it loses in the process. When you are a beginner at something, you do not yet know what is impossible. You do not know which questions are naive. You have not yet absorbed the field's assumptions, its conventions, its settled answers. Your attention moves freely because it has not yet been narrowed. By knowing where to look, the expert's mind is, in one sense, vastly more capable. It recognizes patterns the beginner cannot see. It solves problems automatically that the beginner must work through laboriously. It is faster, more efficient, more reliable, but it has also closed off. The assumptions that make expertise fast are the same assumptions that make it hard to see what the assumptions are missing. The expert knows what works, and this knowledge quietly prevents the question of whether there is something that works better. Shoshin is the practice of returning to openness, not pretending to not know what you know, but holding what you know, more lightly staying available to what isn't yet understood, what isn't yet visible, what the settled mind has stopped asking. In Japanese martial arts, this concept is embedded in the culture of rank. A beginner wears a white belt. Over years of practice, the belt darkens through dyeing, through use, through the accumulation of absorbed sweat and effort. By the time a practitioner reaches the highest level, the belt has darkened all the way to black. But there is a tradition that the black belt, worn for long enough, eventually fades. The dye wears out. The black returns to white. The master's belt and the beginner's belt look the same. This is not coincidence. It is the whole philosophy in a single image. Mastery is not the permanent possession of certainty. It is the capacity to move between knowing and not knowing, to carry deep competence without being imprisoned by it. The master who can return to white belt attention is more capable than the master who cannot. Suzuki Roshi put it another way. The goal of practice is always to keep our beginner's mind. Here is where this becomes practically relevant. To the experience of starting over, most of the suffering in starting over comes not from the circumstances themselves, but from the comparison. You are measuring your current beginner's position against the expert position you left behind. You are experiencing the incompetence of early learning against the baseline of knowing more. This comparison is the problem. It is not wrong. Exactly, you did know more in the domain you left, but it treats the beginner's position as a diminished state, as if the only value is in what you've accumulated and the only movement is forward. Shoshin offers a different valuation. The beginner's position has specific advantages that the expert position doesn't. You ask questions the expert stopped asking. You notice things the expert's pattern Recognition has already categorized and moved past. You are available to surprise in a way that efficiency has closed off. These are not consolation prizes. In environments that are genuinely changing, which is most environments most of the time, beginner's attention is often what correctly perceives the change, while expert attention keeps trying to apply yesterday's solutions. Research on creativity and innovation consistently shows a pattern that sounds counterintuitive until you've seen it enough times. Breakthrough contributions in many fields come disproportionately from people who are new to the field, or from experts in one domain who bring beginners' eyes to another, not because expertise is wrong, but because the beginner doesn't yet know which questions are off limits. The physicist who changed biology, the outsider who reorganized an industry that insiders had stopped questioning, the person who had failed in one field and, in starting over in a new one, applied approaches that the established practitioners had never considered, because they had never needed to. Shoshin is not the naive position. It is the position that remains available to what the efficient, pattern-matching, expert mind has already filed away. There is also something specifically valuable about the practice of starting over itself, about the experience of being a beginner again as an adult. Most adults rarely place themselves in situations of genuine incompetence. The life of an adult is largely structured to avoid it, to stay in domains where competence is established, to present reliably rather than to attempt riskily, to minimize the exposure to the specific vulnerability of not knowing. This is understandable. The feeling of being incompetent at something in front of other people, or even in private, in your own estimation, is genuinely uncomfortable. The adult ego is organized to a significant degree around not feeling this way. But the avoidance has a cost that compounds over time. The people who have started over multiple times, who have been genuine beginners in multiple domains across a lifetime, by choice or by circumstance, tend to develop a particular and valuable relationship with not knowing. The vulnerability of the beginner position becomes less threatening, because they have moved through it before and arrived somewhere. They know, in their body as much as their mind, that incompetence is not a permanent state. That the discomfort at the beginning is not a signal that they are in the wrong place. It is simply the sensation of learning. They become, in a sense, fluent in starting over. And in a world where most domains are changing faster than any single expertise can keep pace with, this fluency may be worth more than the accumulated certainty it replaced. The next time you are standing at a beginning by choice or by circumstance, there is a practice before doing anything else, before measuring how far you are from where you want to be. Ask yourself what is available here that wasn't available before. Not to make the starting over feel good, not to reframe the difficulty into something easier or to force gratitude you don't actually feel. Simply as a genuine inquiry into what is actually present at the beginning that wasn't present at the end of the last chapter. What questions are you free to ask that you had stopped asking? What have you already accumulated in the domain you're leaving that translates to this new beginning in ways you haven't fully mapped yet? What are you noticing with genuinely fresh eyes that someone already established in this territory has long since stopped seeing? These are not rhetorical questions. They have real answers, and the answers are the Shoshin advantage. The specific return that starting over offers in exchange for what it costs. Shoshin is not a consolation. It is a technology. The beginner's mind is not the absence of expertise. It is a specific quality of attention, one that experts spend decades consciously trying to recover, and that you have access to right now at the beginning for free. The practice is simply recognizing it as the resource it is before efficiency and habit close it off again. If this kind of wisdom, the kind that reframes not just what you think, but how you think about thinking, is something you want more of, follow for more. There's a lot here.